All right, everyone, welcome in to welcome to the Instant Review podcast. I was going back in time there for a second. A show I used to host in Knoxville, Tennessee, but this is the Instant Review podcast. Sorry, I've been getting over quarantine here for the past couple of days, so my brain's perhaps in a bit of a fog, but I'm doing much better. And the thing that helped cure me over the weekend was some wild card weekend football, 6 games, as we were able to eliminate 6 teams from the running for the Lombardi Trophy, as 8 teams remain as we head into the divisional round weekend. I'm Nicholas Hill, your host, joined as always by Leon Taryan, Conor Kennedy, and finally, back for the first time in a couple of weeks, Oscar Orengo. Guys, how are you doing? How are you feeling about the playoffs? You know, it's time to really start weeding out the pretenders.
Been feeling good just smoking that Patriots pack.
How did it feel? How did it feel, Connor? Like being out in like New York, upstate, and you guys won that game against the Patriots. That
It was
must have been
cold.
pretty cool.
It was
Any
cold.
riots?
Yeah. I was there. It was cold as hell, but it honestly didn't even feel like it. I was just jumping up and down, screaming like almost the whole time. The stadium was absolutely electric. Probably the best game I've ever been to. It was like kind of cathartic in a way, just like taking down our division rival, who's owned us for like 20 years, and then just to kick their ass on national TV. Like, geez, that was amazing.
Like, that must have been like a whole childhood worth of frustrations taken out in one night.
Oh yeah.
As my friend Gustavo said, who I do two countries, all sports, my other podcast with, definitely sums it up succinctly with what a weekend of football. And certainly, indeed, and he is rooting for my Titans.
Oh, jeez.
As he's my friend from Brazil, so I have successfully brainwashed him into becoming a Titans fan. He's actually a Jets fan, but I mean, it's the Jets. Yeah.
Tough scene.
That's about Ryan Fitzpatrick.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I was thinking about that too. Ryan Fitzpatrick, who ended up beating the Patriots in 2011, one of my first football memories, beating them at Ralph Wilson Stadium in Buffalo, New York. He was in the stands with the fans, out in the cold with his shirt off, screaming his head off too, supporting the Bills, even though he's technically still the quarterback for the Washington football team. Ryan Fitzpatrick, one of my favorite quarterbacks ever. Just so awesome to see him back in Buffalo. Hopefully he signs a one-day contract with us to retire at some point. Legendary.
Yeah, and not a guy who's going to be in Canton, but certainly a guy that people are going to remember just because of whenever he showed up, he always seemed to have some sort of impact. And he certainly has talent. He's probably the most successful football player to ever come out of Harvard. So not many people get to say they graduated from Harvard and went to the NFL and have 12 kids or whatever he has.
Yeah.
So, certainly
I think we should retire his number on all 32 teams in the league. Such a legend.
Yeah.
Number 14, never to be worn again by anyone in the NFL. But since we're talking about the Bills so much, I'm just going to throw it to Connor here. Let's talk about your Bills to start off with. They destroyed the Patriots 47-17. Just totally depanced the New England Patriots, made Bill Belichick and Mac Jones cry all the way back to Foxborough. So you were there in the freezing cold. It was like 0 degrees in Buffalo. What in the world happened?
Yeah, so the Bills just kicked the Patriots' ass, fair and square. We had won the AFC East the week before. Obviously the Patriots are probably our biggest rival. They beat us in our last matchup when they came to Buffalo in a very windy game, kind of fluky. But they ran the ball on us, won 14-10, and then we came back to Gillette for the revenge game. We beat them also. We beat one of Josh Allen's best performances. But then this game, man, probably the best game I've ever seen Josh Allen play. Apparently, in NFL history, at least in the post merger era and the Super Bowl era, this is the first game, playoff or regular season, with no punts, no field goals, and no turnovers from a team's offense, or at least the Bills' offense, in league history. a perfect offensive game for the Bills. 7 drives, 7 touchdowns. The only drive that didn't end up in any points scored were the kneel downs taken by OG MVP Mitch Trubisky, who could be a New York Giant soon. But going back to this game, man, we got a run game going now. Devin Singletary, 2 touchdowns. I think he averaged over 5 yards a carry. So that's a great thing to see. Great to see a actual run game developing in Buffalo. You know, a lot of critiques centered around the Bills is about how a lot of the load of this offense is, you know, on Josh Allen's shoulders, on his back. And of course, he can carry us to a lot of wins, but if you're playing in the playoffs, a solid run game will definitely help quite a bit. And I'm really happy that Brian Daboll and the Bills coaching staff have really centered this running offense around Devin Singletary being the bell cow back. But going back to Josh Allen, 5 touchdowns, man, 2 to Dawson Knox. One of them just being a random ball that he was just thrown away, and then Dawson Knox ended up catching it. Kind of similar to the catch in that Niners playoff game in the 80s with Joe Montana, if y'all remember that. And then, you know, everyone showed up, really, even if they didn't score a touchdown. You know, Stephon Diggs with some clutch catches, Isaiah McKenzie, Gabe Davis with a great touchdown, Cole Beasley, you know what I'm saying? And the backup defense was actually playing pretty well towards the end of the game. And of course, Micah Hyde with that crazy interception. I honestly thought that Aguilar just like dropped a pass or something, but that was the most athletic interception I've ever seen, if that makes sense. And you know, just the defense showed up too in general. There was a really rejuvenated pass rush that I haven't really seen since like maybe that Kansas City game in October on Sunday Night Football. And of course, the secondary showed up too, as usual. You can't ask for a much better game from your favorite team, honestly. And, you know, it's going to be really tough to deal with these Bills as they go further into the playoffs. It's going to be it's going to be a great matchup, seeing them go into Arrowhead and play the Chiefs with one of the best offenses in the league alongside Buffalo, as well as a rejuvenated defense. And that's my whole spiel.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for that divisional round, Bills versus Chiefs, because even with all these divisional round matchups that we see, these 4 different matchups, we really don't know what's going to happen. There are injuries across the board, 8 solid teams there, and I think the Bills might be out for some revenge on what happened last season, the AFC Championship. Well, I know we're going to talk about this later on who we're going to pick to win that game, but I'm feeling very confident in Buffalo, especially with how Josh Allen's performed later in the season. I know his stats were very similar to last season, but it felt like they struggled to really start off strong this year, especially with some of the upset losses, but they really put it together in the second half of the season leading up to Week 18, and I'm feeling good about him going forward in the playoffs.
It was like a John Elway type performance. It was awesome.
Yeah, but certainly, you know, obviously the Bills' offense was perfect. I mean, to not punt once, I mean, that's just a perfect performance. But certainly the moment where this game truly was over was on the Patriots' first possession. That they had a really good first possession going. They were driving it into Bills' territory, and Mac Jones throws it down the field. And it looks like it was gonna be potentially a touchdown, but Micah Hyde, the play that he made running across the field to steal a touchdown and turn it into an interception, that really took the sails out of the Patriots. And, you know, we're talking about this pregame, our show here about, you know, how the Patriots had some success running the ball. Of course, infamously a couple of weeks ago in the regular season, they won in Buffalo by only passing 3 times. But it seemed like in this game, they were going to make a more concerted effort to try to pass the ball, especially when they fell behind. And it just isn't their strong suit. I don't know why, when they got them 2 touchdowns, they just decided to abandon the run game entirely. I think that was very un-Belichick-like. Because I think in the past, when they had Tom Brady, they stuck to the game plan, and they were able to get back in a lost situation. You know, when they got back from a 28-3 deficit in Atlanta, for example. And there's other occasions where they fell behind and were able to come back and win a game because Belichick teams typically don't panic. But I think that's kind of a byproduct of having a rookie quarterback. When they fell behind that far, that quickly, they just panicked. And, you know, that's just something that you have to go through with a rookie quarterback. It doesn't make Mac Jones' first season all of a sudden terrible. I mean, it was a great rookie season, better than any other rookie season by a mile. But obviously, this is something that he can take, grow from, and come back. And, because we've seen some of these first-time quarterbacks this weekend look good. We've seen some of them look really bad. I think Mac Jones obviously didn't have a good performance, but, I think he can come back and have some decent performances moving forward. And we lost Oscar, so hopefully he'll be able to get back here in a second. But any last takes here on this Bills Patriots game?
I guess I'll talk about the Patriots for a little bit. I mean, they'll definitely have some soul searching to do in this offseason. Of course, they dropped a lot of money this past offseason on guys like Jonnu Smith, Hunter Henry, Nelson Aguilar, Matthew Judon, and some of them have helped out this team quite a bit. But they still really got to bring in some better pass catchers, at least in terms of their wide receiver core. I mean, Kendrick Bourne, Nelson Aguilar, they're all right, but he doesn't have a true number one wide receiver, and that's something that they'll definitely need to address, at least in the draft. I don't know if they'll be able to find someone in free agency that can really fill that void. Perhaps some O-line depth, and definitely someone in the secondary to really be there alongside J.C. Jackson to really challenge guys in this league that they'll need to really frustrate if they're really going to be a contender again, like a Patrick Mahomes, like a Josh Allen, Justin Herbert. In Mac Jones, I don't know. I know I'm a Bills fan, but I just don't really see him being that heir apparent to Tom Brady, at least from what I've seen so far. I could be wrong, of course, but I just feel like he's kind of just like a game manager, kind of like maybe like an Alex Smith or a Tua, where you can win a lot of games with him, but I just don't think that he'll bring you to the promised land necessarily. Maybe this will be a hot take, but I don't think that Belichick's going to win another Super Bowl in New England again. All I'm saying.
Yeah, we do have Oscar back, so I'm just curious what's
There
your
you
thoughts
go.
on that hot take.
Sorry, guys. Well, I think I don't completely agree with you, Connor, on the Mac Jones being like the quarterback of the future. He's definitely smart enough. It's his rookie season. I think you're putting a lot on him. I think it'd be really interesting. You kind of said how they don't have wide receivers on the Patriots team. And I saw a little bit of how they were trying to recreate that Pats team with Aaron Hernandez and Gronkowski and how like successful they were, like getting their tight ends there with Jonnu Smith and with Hunter Henry. And there were flashes of that. So I wonder if that's also something like that's coming, because and it's probably just part of that nature of just Belichick not being able to draft well. Like I think last time they got N'Keal Harry, and that's kind of been a draft pick that they haven't even recovered from yet. And it's like been a thorn in his side. He hasn't been able to develop his wide receiver core. So that's I think that's been pretty rough. But I think Mac Jones has shown a lot of potential. And kind of talking to what you said, Nick, like why they probably panicked is also like the defense. The New England Patriots defense is not as good as it's been in the Tom Brady era, where you could always just sit back and say, hey, you know what, they're going to get a stop here, And then going back to the Bills, I think one big part of their success is that they were able to find more pieces as weapons. They finally got Devin Singletary involved. I think everybody's been screaming for like, hey, let's get some Singletary in the game. Let's get a true running back. Let's not put Josh Allen at risk all the time. And yeah, you saw how it works. You get that real option play, and people know you're not as one dimensional. You got a lot of success. It'd be really interesting what they do against the Chiefs.
For sure.
Yeah, and to go back to a point you talked about, Oscar, I just think in general, when it comes to young QBs, I think people have lost their patience entirely. Like, I've seen now people call Jalen Hurts a bust because he played bad on the road in Tampa in his first playoff game against a really, really good Bucs defense. Like, come on, guys. Like, he led his team to the playoffs. I understand Philadelphia did not play a hard schedule. I get that. But still, point stands. He made the playoffs. Zach Wilson didn't make the playoffs. Trevor Lawrence didn't make the playoffs. But Jalen Hurts in his first full, season of starting in the playoffs. I mean, I'm not saying he's going to be a Super Bowl winning quarterback or an MVP quarterback. I don't think he will be, but he can be a solid starter for a little bit. I really do. I think that Patrick Mahomes and Justin Herbert taking off the way that they did has put so much pressure on these other QBs because everyone wants their quarterback to be Mahomes, but there's only one Patrick Mahomes. Not even Herbert's half of what Mahomes is. I mean, Herbert's really good, but I don't. He's not Mahomes.
Maybe.
If Herbert were half,
pretty close.
if Herbert were a 3/4 of Mahomes is, then the Chargers would have been playing those last weekend. So
I think you're sounding impatient, Nick. I think you're being impatient.
Okay, well, maybe I am, but that's what I'm saying. When everyone expects your quarterback to be Mahomes, then you get unrealistic expectations. Because at the end of the day, I think we do tend to forget that there's 22 players on a football team, or 53 really, but 22 with 11 on offense, 11 on defense, and it's not all about the quarterback. So I don't know, but I guess some of the dialogue I've been seeing around this week about some of these young quarterbacks and their debuts. I think especially when you compare him to a guy like Joe Burrow, who we're going to talk about here in a little bit, in his playoff debut, it's certainly. I guess people are putting young quarterbacks in two categories. Oh yeah, he's going to be special, and oh yeah, he's already a bust. And we're rarely putting quarterbacks in he's solid, could be great, but maybe he won't, turn into anything special.
All I have to add to this is that Josh Allen had more passing touchdowns in that game than Mike Glennon did all season. So once again, it's been tough being a Giants fan, but let's hope free agency in the draft goes well.
Mitch Trubisky's going to save your franchise, dude. Him and Brian Dable are coming.
Yeah. I don't mind giving him a 1-year chance. I mean, he's similar to like Marcus Mariota in a way. They were able to get their teams to the playoffs, but from an individual perspective, they had a defense there to help them. They always had some supporting cast. So I don't mind seeing him come in for 1 year.
He'd be an upgrade.
Whatever they're going to do.
He'd be an upgrade over Daniel Jones. I do think that if you don't get like a Russell Wilson, that's what the Giants are going to have to do until you get to the 2023 draft. And then you can draft a Bryce Young or CJ Stroud or whoever else is going to be available in that draft. But because I think 2023 is going to be an amazing quarterback draft. Now, to throw it back to you, Leon, we got to talk about that insane Niners-Cowboys game. And unfortunately, as the title of this episode demonstrates, the Cowboys, because the game was on Nickelodeon as well as CBS, they had a bucket load of slime. They face planted into the slime, and really they did it themselves. Not really even the Niners. The Niners didn't push them into the ocean of slime. They decided to willingly jump into the slime.
So 49ers win 23-17. I called it. Connor called it. Nick called it. Oscar, I hope you called it while we didn't see you on the podcast. Oh, you didn't? Oh, but
I didn't think it was going to happen that way. I was actually watching the game thinking like, all right, I was going to come back real quick. Like, it's no big deal.
Yeah, so Jimmy Garoppolo, who was 2-1 in the playoffs before coming into this game, or 3-1. So he had a winning record coming into this game. Thumb injury. Now he has a shoulder injury. Now Nick Bosa got hurt with a concussion during the game. Fred Warner was out for some time during the game. But next week, Aaron Rodgers has never beaten the San Francisco 49ers in the playoffs. He's only beaten them in the regular season. So we'll see how this 6-seed 49ers team plays against the number 1 seed Green Bay Packers. I'm excited for this game. Happy the Dallas Cowboys lost. Always rooting against them. But, even the play calling, you have to think about it from doing a QB run with no timeouts left in the middle of the field, not enough time to spike it. Did not give it to the referee in time, gave it to the center instead. Just a whole bunch of miscommunication. And now we see a lot of people on social media thinking, will Mike McCarthy still be the head coach of the Cowboys? Yes or no? Maybe will it be Kellen Moore or someone else? Will Dan Quinn be a head coach elsewhere because he had 4 other interviews this week? But wow, what a game. And I can't believe we called that upset.
I just cannot believe that Mike McCarthy still has a job right now. Okay. So I don't know how many 12-year-olds. Okay, you put them, you give them the ball at like the 30-yard line in Madden 22. You tell them, okay, you have no timeouts. You have to score a touchdown to win. Find a way to score a touchdown to win. I would bet at least $1,000 that not a single 12-year-old is going to call a quarterback draw with 15 seconds left. But yet, the Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy, who are paid millions of dollars, collectively got together and decided, okay, let's do a quarterback draw. And the Cowboys fans can whine all they want about the officiating. They go, oh, why do you take so long to readjust the ball? Well, you have to give the ball to the referee, and then they're the ones who put the ball down. But still, why would you put yourself in that spot anyway? They were giving you all the room in the world to throw it to the sideline and set you up for one shot to the end zone, which is what you were going to get. But, outside of just that one play, I mean, really, it's just Dak Prescott. And, I've hit praise on him throughout the year. I thought that he was playing by far some of his best football throughout the season. But, man, was he just not very good in this game? And a lot of it wasn't his fault. The offensive line got absolutely manhandled by the 49ers D-line for the first 3 quarters. I mean, they couldn't get anything going in the Russian attack. Ezekiel Elliott is getting paid $90 million to average less than 3 yards a carry in the playoffs. 12 carries, 31 yards. I mean, Tony Pollard only got 4 carries, but, he had 14 yards, over 3 yards a carry. Still don't understand why Pollard isn't getting the majority of the carries, but, when you're paying one of your backs $90 million, you got to give him the ball. But, Dak, it's just not good enough. I mean, it was something like, 120 yards for the first 3 quarters? Then he threw the other half in the fourth quarter, and he looked good in the fourth quarter up until they decided to sneak it with 14 seconds left. The offensive line, which has been a strong point for the Cowboys for the last several years, really it failed them in this game. And the defense, I will say, in the second half, I thought played really well. But in that first half, they got really gashed by the 49ers rushing attack. And you really have to commend the creativity of Kyle Shanahan. What he's been able to do with Deebo Samuel. I mean, Deebo Samuel had 13 touches in this game for 110 yards. Just all over the field. Elijah Mitchell was effective in this game. He got almost 100 yards rushing. And they managed to win in spite of Jimmy Garoppolo. I mean, Jimmy Garoppolo was just awful. I mean, especially in the fourth quarter. I mean, he was the reason why the Cowboys were even in the game to begin with, because he threw that just horrible interception, and he missed 4 other catches that would have ended the game. Like in the third quarter, they were 23-7, and he had a man open downfield that would have gotten a deep first down and probably would have put them in the scoring range, but he threw the ball over by 15 yards. And, it's just going back to the Super Bowl 2 years ago when he overthrew Emmanuel Sanders on a play that probably would have won him the football game. A couple of weeks ago at the Titans game when he just went MIA in the second half and allowed the Titans to come back and win. I can't trust Jimmy G to win the Super Bowl, because I think outside of Jimmy G, the 49ers have one of the most talented and diverse rosters in the entire league. They can do a multitude of things. But unfortunately, their quarterback play is going to hold them back, and it really kind of demonstrates why the 49ers, decided to go for Trey Lance. And I don't know if Trey Lance is going to be the guy moving forward for the Niners, but Jimmy Garoppolo isn't going to be, and I can't trust him to go into Lambeau Field and win. Because you remember, 2 years ago when they beat the Packers 35-8, Jimmy Garoppolo only threw the ball 8 times in a home game, because that was Raheem Mostert going all crazy over the Packers defense. There's no way Jimmy G is going into Lambeau only throwing 8 times and being able to win. So it'll be interesting to see what Kyle Shanahan has pulled up. But, I do think that in that fourth quarter, he put too much in the hands of Jimmy G, and it almost cost him the game. But he got fortunate, because Kyle Shanahan, if he's known for anything, is late playoff collapses. So we'll see how is this Packers game.
Hey, before I go into my 2 cents on this, I just want to give a shout out to Dak Prescott. He continued that great tradition of the losing quarterback winning the Nickelodeon Valuable Player Award. So just congratulations to him.
With 81% of the vote, too.
Yeah. Handed down from him by Mitch Trubisky, of course. I voted for Dalton Schultz, by the way, but happy to see Dak win it too. Yeah, it just honestly, I was asleep for part of it, but from the first half that I saw, it just never felt like the Niners, or sorry, it never felt like the Cowboys were really to win this game. Like Nick was saying, the $90 million man Ezekiel Elliott wasn't doing all that much. Maybe they should cut ties with him. They won't, but he's not going to be that productive for much longer. And yet it's Gustavo with the quote, very disappointed at the Cowboys. I think a lot of people are. We just found out that the Cowboys are fraudulent. I'm not too surprised by it, honestly. If you look back on how their season's gone, of course, a lot of their wins were against their division rivals, the Washington football team, the New York Giants, and the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, they were 6-0 against the NFC East, 6-6 against everyone else for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, there were some holes that were exposed quite a few times. I mean, they were blown out by the Denver Broncos, who, Pat Shurmur can't scheme an offense to save his life, so that isn't too good. And that was all on full display. A lot of the people were saying the Niners are a scary team to play in the playoffs. You don't want to play them. And they showed that definitely on Sunday. I don't think they will in Lambeau, but, they definitely exposed the Cowboys for who they were. And to go back to Mike McCarthy, yeah, they're an overrated team. They're just a brand at this point, honestly. I mean, they've only won 3 or 4 playoff games since their last Super Bowl. Like the Jaguars.
1995 was the last time they went to the NFC Championship. Man, think about this. When they went to the NFC Championship game last time, the Tennessee Titans didn't even exist. They were still the Houston Oilers. The Jaguars, I don't think, even existed. The Texans didn't exist.
And not only that, but the Jaguars in that time period have more playoff wins than the Dallas Cowboys. And you know what the Jaguars' reputation is? The Jaguars' reputation is that they're a terrible team. So yeah, maybe it's not the Cowboys' year. Maybe it was never going to be, but and Mike McCarthy too. I highly doubt that they're going to fire him. I think one of Stephen Jones, I think that's Jerry Jones' kid, already gave him a vote of confidence saying that he's absolutely going to be back next season. But like I've been saying for the past month or something, Mike McCarthy has always been carried by talent. That's what carried him to a Super Bowl ring. It was Aaron Rodgers. And of course, when Aaron Rodgers was injured for part of 2017, I think part of 2018 also, we saw how bad Mike McCarthy's coaching can be. He was exposed. And then, of course, last year he went 6-10. And then this year, they might have underachieved, honestly. Well, all right. The Texans have never made it to a championship game, but Jaguars and Titans, yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
Yeah, because I know the Texans made it to the divisional round, so maybe that's what he's confusing it for. But yeah. I mean, all those teams have had more success over the past decade and a half than the Cowboys. It's just, because I was going to bring this exact point up about Aaron Rodgers. I mean, do you think he was sitting back somewhere laughing watching that game? He absolutely was. Just because, Mike McCarthy, sure. How many Super Bowls did Mike McCarthy cost Aaron Rodgers? 2, 3 at least? It's just insane. I was watching something on that earlier today, a video I like to watch about Aaron Rodgers and about how many times that he scored on his final possession in the NFC title game. I think it was 3 separate times to tie the game and never got the ball back. Never got the ball back in the playoffs. He's got this reputation of being a choker, but it's rarely ever his fault that he loses in the playoffs. Because most of the time he was dealing with a boneheaded coach like Mike McCarthy, as was demonstrated by this past Sunday. But unfortunately, unlike Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, even though he is very talented and he has got a lot of talent around him, just is not as clutch. He's still a top half quarterback. He's a top 10 quarterback, arguably. But he's going to need a better coach, I think, if Dak's ever going to want to be a championship winning quarterback, because Mike McCarthy isn't going to be it. I think he has the potential to win a championship one day. Just not with who's surrounding him right now.
I think what was also crazy is the video before the game where all the fans were rushing into the stadium. If you guys saw that, I think Fox Sports shared that, or
Yeah.
someone on
Oh,
Instagram
and then
shared it.
them throwing stuff at the refs afterwards. It reminded me of my Tennessee Vols fan base a couple of months ago against Ole Miss. It was like two sides of the same coin almost. But and you should never throw stuff at referees. And they read the call. Like they had to touch the ball. So they can be mad all they want at the refs, but the Cowboys, that was their loss.
But we called it.
That's the most important part.
Yeah, we all picked the Niners, and I was starting to get worried, thinking about like, okay, so.
Oh no, Oscar didn't call them. Oscar, what do you think? Yeah. Oscar,
I guess I was the one guy who thought the Cowboys were going to pull this one out because they were a top defense. They were like potentially good offense. It looked like they never woke up in the game. Like they never woke up. The running game never got started. Dak Prescott couldn't find his wide receivers. The defense was getting to him. It kind of sucked. But yeah, just like you guys said, the 49ers, they lit it up. They got big. And Nick, I have a good response to your Jimmy Garoppolo problem. Just give the ball to Deebo Samuel. He can throw. He throws for touchdowns. He throws. Why not? Give him the ball. Let him be under center, and we'll see. Yeah, I didn't expect it. It actually reminded me of the text message when we were watching the game, man. Text message say, "Hey, man, the Cowboys might have a chance." You say, Jimmy Garoppolo is like single-handedly keeping them in the game, and I guess it didn't click. But yeah, I guess you're absolutely right. The 49ers, they're an explosive team, and they have a lot of pieces, so it's good. Yeah.
All you do is let Deebo Samuel throw to Juwan Jennings, and they will be fine. That'll get them to the next round. But obviously, we'll talk a lot more about the Niners and Packers here in a moment. But Oscar, I know you want to talk about the game that happened last night, the first ever Monday night playoff game. And honestly, it probably let down a lot of people. Let down me because I was hoping for a good, exciting game, but it wasn't that.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't have like the cutthroat like intensity, but it was very much a dominant game for the Rams. Their defense, they smothered Kyler Murray. He at one point it looked like he was spooked that the defense would get him anyway. I think there's one play that they got recorded where he thought Sam Darnold was going to get to him, or was it Jalen Ramsey, and he just dove and hit the ground before anybody even touched him. So it sucks that they got to a guy who had so much potential. This guy was supposed to be like one of the offensive player of the year kind of contenders, and the Cardinals they fell apart. And the Rams showed how good they were. Their running game, they found it with Cam Akers coming back, Sonny Michel. They both got in there and they did wonderful. Odell Beckham somehow manages to leave his mark in this game too. Cooper Kupp wasn't as active, but I'm sure it's just because the defense is covering them. They're doing what they have to do. Stafford, I mean, in reality, as a Detroit Lion, I think he had pretty not a quiet career, but he never seemed really tested. And here he comes back from a toe injury. He gets to have a good performance. So we'll see. I think the Rams are kind of like a very complete team coming out of this round, and they're dangerous for real. They can hit you in a lot of places from a lot of sides, in a lot of ways.
I think the presence of Odell Beckham this year shocked a lot of us. The guy's been catching multiple touchdowns. He caught a game winner against the Ravens, and he's been so effective whenever Cooper Kupp was literally blanketed by the defense the entire game. So Stafford has targets all across the field, even with Robert Woods out for the season. He has Kupp. Higbee's risen as more of a receiver type tight end whenever he was more of a blocker in previous years. Cooper Kupp, obviously. Van Jefferson stepped up with Robert Woods out. Cam Akers is back running over players. And I think Darrell Henderson is hurt. They also have Sony Michel, who played well. And most importantly with this game, on a safety note, Buda Baker is okay after Cam Akers, their helmet-to-helmet collision. So he did announce on Twitter that he's doing just fine. He passed all the necessary testing.
Yeah, that was an absolutely terrifying hit. I mean, him and Cam Akers. I mean, that was just a violent. I mean, I'm curious to see what like the G forces and stuff were on that, because that was probably about equivalent to like a car crash or something. I mean, it was brutal to watch, but thankfully, it sounds like he'll be able to make a full recovery. Hopefully, he doesn't have a lot of long-term damage from that. But I mean, I think you two hit it on the nail on the head. It was just a beatdown, and the Rams. What kind of shocked me in a way was because if you look at the Cardinals at the beginning of the season. I think back to week 1 against my Titans. They dominated. Chandler Jones had 5 sacks. They overwhelmed the offensive line. But last night, the pass rush just non-existent. They could not get to Matthew Stafford. I think they might have had like a sack or 2 at one point, but it just wasn't. They did have 2 sacks, but otherwise, the Rams had 140 yards rushing. They were able to control the clock. I mean, Arizona only had 24 minutes of possession in this game, and that was because they couldn't do anything with the football. They had net 122 passing yards. Kyler Murray was 19 of 34 for 137 yards and 2 interceptions. Only had 2 rushing attempts for 6 yards, and he was a little banged up, sure, but for a franchise quarterback, I thought he even played worse than Jalen Hurts. To be honest, I mean, considering what he has to work with, I know he didn't have DeAndre Hopkins, but still, he has 2 really good running backs behind him. It's just not good enough, and it once again proves my point I've been making for weeks now. Cliff Kingsbury teams suck after Halloween. They suck in the second half. I mean, you look at his record from between Texas Tech and Arizona. It's something like 42-21 before in September and October, but after Halloween, he has like a 400 winning record or something. It's unbelievable. I don't know how this guy keeps.
Sounds so ridiculous.
Yeah, I don't know how he manages to have a team that starts up so well every single year and then falls apart every single year. I mean, he did this with Patrick Mahomes at Texas Tech. I mean, he couldn't go to bowl games at Texas. I mean, you realize how easy it is to make a bowl game in college football? There's 80 teams out of 130 make a bowl game. And he had Patrick Mahomes, and he couldn't make a bowl game because they couldn't win after October. And it's unbelievable. He's gonna get another year, right? Because they have such a good year. But it just seems like he comes up with something a little different every single year that is brilliant, but he can't adjust throughout the year. I don't really know what to say. And you gotta really hope that Kyler Murray is able to come back from this, and obviously because he's going to play well in the regular season. But how much confidence do we have that he can come back in next January, guide these Cardinals back to the playoffs, and rectify this performance? Because it's certainly really concerning. Because you got to remember, in the regular season when they went to Los Angeles, Kyler Murray put up, I believe, 4 touchdowns. They won by it was like a 37-14 game. They absolutely dominated the Rams. But they didn't even look like they belonged on the same field. They looked like a 7th seed last night. What do y'all think? What do y'all think about that? It was kind of shocking just how bad Kyler Murray was last night on the biggest stage.
Yeah. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. You can't really trust Cliff Kingsbury in situations like this. I mean, even talking about his tenure in Arizona, especially last season, they had a really strong start. And then, of course, the Hail Murray happened when they played the Bills. And they won the highlight reel with that one for sure. But then after that game, they went 2-5, went 8-8, and missed the playoffs. Well, Mitch Trubisky and the Chicago Bears, really more Matt Nagy and the Chicago Bears, who went 8-8, ended up being in the playoffs. So that's an incredible disappointment. And then, going into the season, I mean, there's been gradual improvement with these Cardinal squads. And of course, this season that was definitely apparent. They were the last undefeated team in the league. They started, I think, 7-0. And then after that, they just fell apart. They won 11 games. They were like literally one game away from winning the division, but they choked that. And then, of course, everything blew up in their face. last night. And I think part of it's they still need to address some key depth issues, particularly at the defensive tackle position, as well as just like their offensive line. Also, Kyler was getting killed for the most part all day. And man, I just don't know what to say. I don't really trust Cliff Kingsbury all that much to really bring this team to a Super Bowl. I mean, maybe they win a playoff game next year, but besides that, I don't really have too many high hopes for this Cardinals team.
Oscar, just what are your final takes on this game?
Well, I actually kind of wonder what kind of Kyler Murray we get next year. Is he going to be more of a runner? Like, you see how this year he wanted to be more of a passer type of quarterback, and he was trying to stay healthy, but he was still hurt. He missed like 4 or 5 weeks with a ankle or toe injury. So I think at some point you just have to decide to say, you know what, this is the type of player I can be, and whatever is better for the team. Unfortunately, he had injuries, and if you kind of limit yourself, you see that he's not a scrambling quarterback anymore. He's trying to be that passing guy, and when you don't have the tools like DeAndre Hopkins on the field, can you adjust? Can you be the guy that steps up and actually takes up your abilities to this? Because it's playoffs. Like, there is no tomorrow. Like, there is no next week. Like, I got to play today because I got to win. And hopefully this loss, you always talk about how like players have like that knockdown. We kind of talked about it with Mac Jones with the Patriots. Like, you kind of get that knockdown. Hopefully you realize you're hungry the next year. Like, hey, I got this close. We did this poorly. Like, we did this bad. Like, J.J. Watt, like, top defensive player. Like, even he was disappointed at the end of the game. He said we played terrible, So, yeah. And I think it was a great win for the Rams. So I think this is let's go on to the next. Let's see.
Absolutely. So we'll see how Arizona moves forward from here in the offseason. But for my kind of like last take here, and I'll probably just go ahead and put this out of the way. We're not going to really talk about the Steelers, Chiefs, or Eagles, Bucs games in too much depth, just because they were kind of expected. They kind of went expectedly the way they went. Y'all have like any quick takes on those? We'll kind of talk about the end about like the necessity of the 7 seed, because I know one of those teams really like they belonged on the field, but that's really I guess topic for another day. But the last game we're really going to go into here is the Bengals Raiders game. This one was a solid game. That was competitive down to the stretch. The Raiders had a 1st and goal at the 9-yard line, but weren't able to find a way to tie it and send it to overtime. And overall, Joe Burrow played very well for his playoff debut. He was 24-34. Had 2 touchdowns. Jamar Chase in his playoff debut, 9 catches, 116 yards, just an absolute monster. He didn't have a touchdown, but still, extremely impressive. Probably one of, definitely putting out the best rookie receiving season probably ever, probably at least since Randy Moss. Definitely better than Justin Jefferson last year. You do have to give some props to Derek Carr. He was 29 54, 310, had a touchdown, did for the game-breaking interception, but I thought he played well overall and giving the Raiders a chance to win. And this what really was the, I guess, theme of this game was both teams were moving the ball up and down the field, but both teams were settling for a ton of field goals. And that really ultimately doomed the Raiders because they needed to take one of those field goals and convert them into a touchdown to give themselves a shot at the win. And it didn't work out like that for the Raiders. So, because obviously they had been extremely clutch. It had been extremely clutch down the stretch with a lot of big time last second wins, but it just wasn't the case here. So kind of just, not necessarily a question here, but when you look at the Bengals moving forward, a lot of people seem to think they are now the dark horse. They are the team that got hot in the year. They are the young, exciting team, the young, exciting quarterback, and the young, exciting wide receiver. Their defense has improved. What do we think about the Bengals? They're kind of the outsider right now because every other team that's left has a lot of playoff experience, including their opponent this weekend, the Titans, of course, and the Bills Chiefs. They're seasoned teams at this point. You have the Niners, Packers, seasoned teams. You have the Rams and the Bucs, very seasoned teams. With the Bengals, they just won their first playoff game in 31 years. And I forgot to mention that as well. I mean, this is the first playoff win in the era of the text message. So now the Detroit Lions have the longest NFL postseason playoff winning drought streak since 1991. But are these Bengals really a championship contending team?
Not yet, but they're showing you what they got next year for sure. Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, that's real. Joe Mixon, he's a talent. I'm not sure actually if he comes back next year. And another rookie who's having a really good startup is their field goal kicker, who's also a rookie, Evan McPherson, who he gave him at least 12 points in that game. So actually not 12, maybe 9. But yeah, I think the Bengals are playing with house money. They get to go play the Titans and know that they got a lot further than anybody thought they were going to be, and that offense core is going to be together for a while. Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, they're real, and hey, they have a lot of potential to be an explosive offense. The Bengals need to have figured something out. They've always kind of had like a defense. Now they finally have an offense that makes sense. Let's see what they got for next year. I think this year is kind of like, hey, you know what? We got this far. Let's have fun. And they definitely have nothing to lose. So if the Titans, if Derrick Henry gets to come back and he's not ready, hey, Bengals might surprise him.
Yeah. Okay. So I think that this, I think that this, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, Alvin and the Chipmunks has made it every appearance.
The Alvin and Chipmunks remix of the Instant Review podcast. But I think that this Bengal season is kind of similar to the Bill season 2020. Not to, be a huge Bills guy. I mean, I am, but obviously Joe Burrow has made a huge leap from year 1 to year 2. It helps that he's not getting killed every damn game. And he's got a true number 1 wide receiver in Jamar Chase, one of the best wide receiver tandems in the league. CJ Uzoma, their tight end's been making leaps and bounds also. Of course, their run game's pretty good too. I think it's accurate to say that they're a dark horse contender, but I don't. I mean, they could go on a run. Honestly, I think they're capable of it. If they get some good bounces, things go their way, et cetera, et cetera. But I think, like Oscar said, it's kind of just a season where they can really show the rest of the league and themselves that they're contenders. And hopefully, they have a good draft class again next, this upcoming draft, really build up that O-line so that Joe Burrow isn't getting sacked so much. And also maybe bring in some run stoppers, some really good D tackles to kind of fill that hole that Geno Atkins left after they cut him. Like something that I saw in that Saturday game, Josh Jacobs was pretty productive. Like you can run on that team. So they definitely still need some help on defense. Re-sign Jesse Bates, like please, he's one of the best safeties in the league. But yeah, they got some really good pieces. Shocked a lot of people. In a great win Saturday, not only just for them, but for the franchise, especially considering its history, for their fan base and for that city of Cincinnati. I saw a video of Zach Taylor in some Cincinnati bar on Saturday night after the game. He gave a game ball to the fans in that bar, so that was really cool to see. A lot of Cincinnati residents, love that team, of course. And I'm really happy to see their growth so far.
You guys can hear me now. It's working good.
Yeah.
It's weird. Sometimes the mic goes like that, but Oscar put it perfectly, 100% perfectly. I think next year, if the Bengals do well in free agency and they do well in the draft, you have next year's Super Bowl champions. I'm going to say that. I think it's bold, but I even think Burrow could be MVP of next year. He has everything he needs. He has Chase, Higgins, Boyd, Uzama. He has Joe Mixon in the backfield. Build on the offensive line so he definitely doesn't get hurt again like he did his rookie season, and get some more run stoppers on that team. And I might even pick them over the Titans next week, but we'll get to that whenever we do picks.
See, here's my thing with that pick, though. I think the Ravens, if they can be healthy, will be a ton better next year. I mean, obviously, Lamar Jackson has not lost a step. He was carrying that team to really potentially the one seed until the wheels just fell apart with that team in terms of injuries and just everything else. The Steelers, I think, have a ton of talent, and if they can find a quarterback like a Russell Wilson or someone like that, I think instantly they become contenders because they obviously have a really good defense. I know that didn't show on Sunday, but that was because they got tired, right? Like there's only so much you can do when you're going 3 and out every single drive. But when the Steelers have a real quarterback again, I think that will help them significantly. And even the Browns, like they have talent, but obviously Baker Mayfield, lots of questions about him. But I still think Kevin Stefanski is a really good coach, and we'll just see if this year was the product of one injury, but two, perhaps some discord within that locker room and some retooling maybe can help them get back to top. So there is still a really tough division. I still think they got some offensive line things they got to work through because Joe Burrow isn't getting killed every week like he used to, but he still is taking a lot of pressure back there. So I do think you got to get slightly better there for them to be a true Super Bowl contender. But they are certainly well improved. They are the most improved team of the year. I'd be curious to see if Zach Taylor gets NFL Coach of the Year. Because obviously I think it's going to be between him and Mike Vrabel. And this game this weekend might determine who gets that Head Coach of the Year awards. So we'll definitely talk way more about that here in a little bit. But before we get into those divisional round games, I'm going to toss it over to Oscar, who's going to discuss some of the key injuries to watch out for. Because obviously it's not going to be as many as we normally go through in a regular season game. But obviously every injury now is magnified by a lot just because it is do or die.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Well, we're going to start off with a nice player return instead of player injury. The Titans might be able to get Derrick Henry after his foot injury. He was clear for contact this week, so if practice goes well, it's not a far-fetched idea that we may be able to see him in uniform and probably getting some reps. And if the guy does well, he holds up, who knows? He might take over the game. Leon kind of mentioned this. Cardinals, I kind of had that Buda Baker safety injury, left in a stretcher. We did get the reports that he will make a full recovery. Obviously, he won't probably not make it back by next week, but we hope that he gets back healthy and we see him soon. With the 49ers, Jimmy Garoppolo kind of spoke about this as well, sprained shoulder. There's really no notes whether he'll be available for next week yet, nothing for sure. And this might be an opportunity for Trey Lance to step up, and we'll see if we get to see them in some playoff football. Were there any other injuries that stuck out to you guys? I know you mentioned Nick Bosa, Leon as well.
Yeah, one did stick out before we go to picks. Tristan Wirfs, the solid right tackle for the Tampa Bay Bucs, hurt his foot in the first quarter during that game. Went out, got tested, came back in, but looked like he was still in pain. So if they can't run on that right side, depending on if Leonard Fournette's back for this game, then the Rams might be able to take advantage of that side of the defense.
Additionally, too, for the Bengals, certainly someone to watch out for, Trey Hendrickson. That I believe, is the linebacker for the Bengals. He had a concussion, and he's been one of their best defensive players. So I'll be very interested to see what his task is going to be. And Josh Trudeau, who's another key part of that Bengals defense, is also injured with a knee injury. So, of course, as of today, Hendrickson had not been cleared yet by the concussion protocol. So those are two key injuries to watch for, especially, if Derrick Henry is able to be back and fully healthy, because we know how much of a handful he is in terms of being able to defend against, and you need everybody you can on the defensive side, especially in the front seven. So those are potentially some huge losses for the Bengals. But kind of segueing into this weekend, and we're going to bring up this graphic here. So you can see the 4 games here. The first game is going to be Bengals-Titans at 4:30 on Saturday. Titans are a 3.5-point favorite. Over-under is 47. Then Saturday night, 8:15. And that first game, Bengals-Titans, is going to be on CBS. Saturday night, 8:15, 49ers at the Packers. That game's going to be on Fox. Packers are a 6-point favorite. Over-under 47.5. Then on Sunday at 3 p.m., this game's going to be on NBC. I know it's weird. It's not going to be Sunday Night Football, Sunday afternoon football. On NBC, Rams and the Buccaneers. Bucs are 3-point favorites, over under 48.5. And then the nightcap on CBS. It'll be Bills and Chiefs, 6:30 in Arrowhead. Chiefs 2.5-point favorites. Over under, compared to all the other ones, much higher, 55. So, do we want to go in order and start with Bengals Titans, or is there a particular game we want to start off with? What do y'all want to do?
I think the easiest one is Bengals Titans, right? Of all those games, probably.
Yeah, I guess let's go. Yeah, go ahead, Oscar.
I think the Titans win. I think the Bengals might give them a run for their money. Hopefully they shine. Hopefully they do something good, something explosive, and they get to take that away. But I think the Titans, especially if Derrick Henry's back, that'll be a big help for their quarterback and their wide receiver crew. They don't become so one-dimensional anymore. It might give them a chance to like get it together before next week. But yeah, I think Titans. I mean, I don't think it'll be easy. But I don't. I think they cover. I think they'll do better than 3.5. I think that'll be a bigger deficit.
Yeah, I want to go last on this, so I'll let Leon and Connor go first on this one.
Just realized that my mic was muted. Thank you. So I'm gonna go with the upside here. Honestly, I'm gonna pick the Bengals to beat the Titans in Nissan Stadium. Now I think the Titans are definitely, they've become better along the stretch, at least these past couple weeks, in the regular season. And of course they're bringing back King Henry, so that's gonna help them quite a bit. Sorry, dog downstairs. And AJ Brown has really helped out this offense quite a bit. He definitely showed up, especially in that Niners game on Thursday Night Football. But I still got to go with the Bengals just because I personally, I just like their offense better. I'm going to go with the quarterback here. Joe Burrow has proven himself to be an elite quarterback in this league this season. Maybe that's too soon to say for some, but for me, I believe it wholeheartedly. And of course, that wide receiver tandem, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, that helps him out quite a bit, along with a stud tight end and a pretty good running back as well. And that defense isn't too bad also. I know I critique the run defense quite a bit, which, I mean, this game could go either way. Honestly, I'm just picking the Bengals personally, but that run defense could be their kryptonite. I think, honestly, no matter who's on the opposing team's defense, it's going to be pretty hard to neutralize King Henry. I've only seen him be neutralized about like once or twice. And the other times he's just trucking dudes, sending them out into outer space, So it's going to be really tough. I don't know how 100% King Henry will be in this game if, he's given, the clear to play. From what I've heard from Mike Vrabel, he's looking better than he ever has. I saw a video of him in pads in practice, I think about a week or two ago, and he was looking pretty good, just like the old King Henry that we all know. But it will be definitely interesting to see what kind of workload they put on him, because him and AJ Brown, I think, are definitely going to have to carry this offense on their back in order to win this game. Because when you think about it, when both of those two were out, and even when Julio Jones was on IR, I know he's definitely not a wide receiver 1 in this league anymore, but he can come up with some clutch catches for sure. Still at this point in his career. But, when Tannehill didn't have those 3 guys, Titans didn't look too good. They did not look like a 1 seed. And I think the Bengals will definitely have to challenge Tannehill in order to win this game, but I don't think it's completely outside the realm of possibility. I'm going with the Bengals here.
I will agree with Connor. Sorry, Nick. I know that the dream matchup for the AFC Championship for the Instant Review podcast between the Titans versus Bills, I don't think it's going to happen. But I'm going to take the Bengals in this matchup. I don't know how well Derrick Henry does coming back from injury, and that makes me more skeptical of him. I think Burrow does well in this game, wins the game. I think it'll be a close game. Goes to the AFC Championship, he loses. But I think the strategy for this is the same thing they did against the Chiefs. Try to make it a shootout. Try to run the ball as best you can, get the most yards, pass the ball for the most yards. But this is a better defense than the Raiders' defense for the Titans. But if I have to give credit to Ryan Tannehill, I will, because I think he still has a winning record in the playoffs, despite losing to the Ravens last year, which I was still surprised with. But this is going to be a close game, and we're going to see a matchup between Joe Burrow, who was the only person in their playoff debut to have a decent game at all and even win a game, against Ryan Tannehill, who's sort of been, in a way, a savior for the Titans at the play calling position, at least for a couple of years. So I have to go with the Bengals for this.
All right, so I'm trying to think about where I want to start with this. So obviously, this has been an odyssey of the year for the Tennessee Titans. They set a record for the most amount of players that have played for an NFL team throughout the year. They played 91 different players and managed to get the 1 seed somehow. You know, it still boggles my mind, and that's why I was saying earlier, I think Mike Vrabel deserves a lot of consideration for NFL Coach of the Year. I mean, there's times where I've been hard on him. There's times where I've been hard on Ryan Tannehill, perhaps unfairly, because there was a time where he was without Derrick Henry, A.J. Brown, Julio Jones. You know, and despite the deficiencies in the Titans roster throughout the year, they gutted it out the last few weeks and got themselves a playoff spot. And it hasn't always been pretty, right? The first half of the 49ers game was atrocious. It was one of the worst halves of Titans football I think I've ever watched. But they came back in that second half, and they specifically decided we are getting the ball to the playmaker that we have on the field right now, and that was A.J. Brown. And A.J. Brown absolutely tore it up in that second half, had 145 yards in that game, was incredible in his first game back in, I believe it was like 5 weeks at that point. Then last week, Julio Jones finally gets back in the field himself. Hasn't really been himself all year, has been injured for most of the year, but he had several big catches down the stretch in that game, including his first touchdown of the entire season. And I think that's truly the X factors in this game, because if you look at the past couple of years, what doomed the Titans? Because obviously in 2019, at the Patriots, at the Ravens, Derrick Henry was just masterful, absolutely controlled those 2 games, and neither one of those teams had an answer for him. But in Arrowhead, an AFC title game, they actually managed to hold Derrick Henry to 69 rushing yards, and that forced the game to go into Ryan Tannehill's hands. Wasn't able to do it then. Last year, the Ravens hold him to 40 yards rushing, forcing him into Ryan Tannehill's hands. They couldn't do it. But this is what I'm curious to see. There's a reason why John Robinson, our general manager, decided to go out and trade for Julio Jones, because we felt that Julio Jones was the missing piece for this offense. That when a defense inevitably slowed down Derrick Henry, you needed an additional, good receiver to help take the top off of defenses. And I think we're about to find out whether or not Julio Jones is able to do that, because obviously he hasn't played for most of the year. But this is where it either is made or break, because if Julio Jones goes off in the playoffs and helps the Titans make a deep run, then it will have been entirely worth it, because this is what the Titans brought in Julio Jones for. To me, that is my X factor, even beyond Derrick Henry, which is crazy to say, because obviously Derrick Henry, to me, is the best running back. And no matter what Colts fans might like to say about Jonathan Taylor, he is the best running back. I mean, he had the rushing lead in the league for 4 weeks after he was hurt. I mean, that's just unheard of. He still finished 6th in rushing and hasn't played since Halloween. I mean, come on now. He's on a different level. And yeah, I don't know exactly what percentage he's going to be, but even a Derrick Henry at like 70% is still better than like all but like maybe 2 or 3 running backs in the entire league. And I will say this, the Bengals do have a solid rush defense. They actually have given up the 5th fewest amount of yards. Although if you go by yards per carry, they are middle of the pack because they have one of the lowest amounts of rushes attempted against them. They have the 5th fewest amount of rushing attempts against them. So the numbers are just a little deceiving compared to some other teams. But they really haven't played a lot of running backs like Derrick Henry. And if he truly is, 80, 90% what he was, or God forbid if he's 100%, I do think that the Titans can ball control this game. And I think that is the main path to victory here because, the Titans, when it comes to their defense, their front seven is really, really good, anchored by Jeffrey Simmons. I think they're going to be able to slow down Joe Mixon and really prevent them from really establishing their running game. But obviously, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase worry me a ton because, that's where the deficiency has been for the Titans defenses. If you can get a great quarterback and a great receiver, they're going to create some problems because outside of Kevin Byard, the rest of the secondary is very average to not great. I mean, Jackrabbit Jenkins, he's had his moments, but overall, I haven't been very impressed with him. I think he's going to be covering a lot of Jamar Chase in this game. That matchup definitely concerns me. I think Chase and Burrow are going to get theirs. But I am very curious to see how is Burrow going to play on the road here because I think it's going to be a great atmosphere. The Bengals are one of those fan bases that aren't going to travel like other fan bases are. Because I think if we get past this week and you get the Bills or Chiefs coming to Nashville, you're going to see a lot of rival fans. Because I'm going to be honest, obviously Titans are one of the smaller fan bases, and Nashville is a destination city, so you're going to see a lot of rival fans in the stadium. But I just my hunch here is I think Derrick Henry is going to show off here because he hasn't been able to play for a while. I think Julio Jones is going to have a great game. I think Ryan Tannehill is playing his best football of the year right now. He had to be basically perfect in Houston to win that game. I know it's just the Texans, but I mean, some of the plays he had to make in that game were some of the most impressive plays he has made the entire year. The plays he made down the stretch against San Francisco were some of the most impressive plays he's made the entire year. I think he has a lot to prove himself because some of his subpar play against the Chiefs and the Ravens the last 2 years are the reasons why they didn't go any further in those two postseasons. I think it's going to be a tight game. I think it'll be like a touchdown or less spread in this one. But give me the Titans. I think the Titans will pull this thing off and will find their way into the AFC title game.
I don't know though, but I know you've been talking about Julio Jones, but I'm still not sold on him because
Julio Jones is not the answer.
He only played 10 games this year, but Julio Jones right now kind of reminds me of AJ Green, someone that was great on one team, but is past his prime and can at best be a wide receiver 3 or wide receiver 4. I think the Titans need to. I think when it comes to the draft or in free agency, get a wide receiver.
I absolutely agree with that. I think also what they should do, maybe more than that, get a tight end because one dude we're missing a lot this year is Johnny Smith. Because by the end of his time here at the Titans, he had probably become an edge top 10 tight end in the entire league. So, I mean, I'm not saying Julio Jones is what he was, but if you can make a couple of key plays at key spots, then that's what it was worth it. I mean, that's my whole point. Because obviously, he wasn't what I think a lot of Titans fans expected him to be throughout the entire season. But I do think that he has an opportunity to make his acquisition worth it to the Titans if he shows up in the playoffs. Because that was his whole point. Because obviously the Titans won the division last year. They had accomplished that goal. But the goal now is while you have Derrick Henry in his prime, can you make a championship run? Can you win a championship with a running back first? Which a lot of people say you can't anymore. But we're about to find out if truly you can't. Now that they have the number 1 seed, they have the home field advantage. It's honestly, this feels like put up or shut up time for the Tennessee Titans. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens on Saturday afternoon. But any other last comments on that game? All right, moving on to the Saturday night game in Lambeau Field. Jimmy G and the 49ers go to Green Bay as Aaron Rodgers gets his first crack at the 2021 postseason. And the Green Bay Packers, obviously it's been since 2010 since they've made the Super Bowl. They've lost in 2 straight NFC championship games. Obviously, this isn't the NFC title game, but will the Packers at least get back to the NFC title game, or will the San Francisco 49ers find a way to pull off another road upset? This time in Lambeau Field, and we have to remind the audience here, Aaron Rodgers has never beaten the San Francisco 49ers in the playoffs. Emphatically, the team that he grew up rooting for in California, the team that he wanted to be drafted by, but who they kind of decided to pass over him with Alex Smith. So there's always been kind of this grudge for Aaron Rodgers against San Francisco. But he's never beaten them in the playoffs. So what do we think is going to happen here in Lambeau?
Damn, that sucks. They're in his head already. I actually expect the Packers to win. I think Aaron Rodgers has shown us right after that game 1 of the season that he's the guy. He is going to compete. He's going to make sure the Packers they do their best. He's going to be as wily and as slick as he is. He's going to make tricks, try to fool the defense. He's got the weapons he needs. He's got Devontae Adams. He can use Marcus Valdes-Scantling. He's got Aaron Jones. He's got Dillard. And on offense, they're set. Their defense has gotten better throughout the season. I think the 49ers, they might be able to surprise, but just like you said, they're weak at the quarterback position. They kind of rely a little bit on surprise and deception to succeed. And I think good defenses, a defense like the Packers, might be able to see through that. Hopefully, they're better than the Cowboys, and they might be able to shut that down, which will make them that much more one-dimensional. How explosive is Elijah Mitchell when you know he's going to be trying to run it down your throat? So I think the Packers win, actually, and I think that's right about it. I think 6. I think a touchdown. I think the Packers will get it done, if not more. It wouldn't surprise me either.
Yeah, I think the Packers win this one easily, honestly. This will probably be Jimmy G's last game in a Niners uniform. He didn't really do all that well in that last playoff game. Like Nick was saying earlier, he was basically the only reason why Dallas even had a chance to win that game. And him playing against top tier corners like Jair Alexander, Rasul Douglas, Eric Stokes, like he's not going to be dealing with Trayvon Diggs, who can catch a lot of picks, but him in coverage, not too good. He gave us the most yards out of any corner in the NFL in coverage. So considering the competition that he's going to be facing, alongside just the conditions, also Lambeau is one of the hardest places to go into as the opposing team, and especially, with the temperatures that they're going to be dealing with. I think the high is like 1 degree in that night at Lambeau, at least so far. Obviously a rough, hostile environment. I just don't really trust Jimmy G in big moments. And of course, Aaron Rodgers is on the other side of the field. And while that 49ers Packers game was pretty close in the regular season, and they also got beat by the Niners in the NFC Championship game a couple years ago, I truly believe that the Packers are the better team just overall, or for the most part. The D-line, at least with the Niners, I think is somewhat better than the Packers. And of course, their fullback, obviously. But, the Packers are also getting healthy at the right time. I mean, David Bakhtiari is coming back. Jair Alexander's coming back. And they were doing pretty fine without them, too. I mean, with how much they've been rotating that offensive line, they've been relatively productive. Their run game's been amazing. Their wide receivers are really stepping up as well. And of course, their corners are playing stellar. And Aaron Rodgers, most talented quarterback in the league right now, probably. So Packers easily.
Hit the nail right on the head, Connor, with them bringing back several top players even after the injuries while playing fine. Bold prediction right here. I think 49ers could possibly be shut out, if not shut out, held under to 10 points. Hardest place to play at home this year is definitely in Lambeau Field, and I think there's a possibility for a shutout. Jimmy G with the shoulder injury on top of the thumb injury. Bosa, we don't know if he's going to be out with a concussion. I'll take the Packers easily on this.
I agree with you, Leon. I think this one's not going to be close. I think it's going to continue the trend of blowout so far throughout these playoffs. I just really, if you think about it, if Dallas wasn't so incompetent, they would have won that game over the 49ers. But alas, they were just as incompetent, and were just ultimately that game came down to which team could be more incompetent, and the Cowboys were more incompetent. The Packers, I think they have a point to prove in this game. They have a point to prove in this entire playoffs. I've said all year, it feels like a last dance year. You know, with all the controversy surrounding Aaron Rodgers, he has a point to prove in these playoffs. The whole Packers team has a point to prove. And I think they're going to take it out on the Niners, who we've all said it. We don't trust Jimmy Garoppolo. And if he can't start, do we really trust Trey Lance, who really has only one start under his belt, to go in his second ever start into Lambeau Field in the playoffs? I'm sorry. He could be an all-time great, and I just don't think this is a great spot to put a guy with that level of experience in. I think Packers are going to roll easily. Their defense is much improved. Obviously, the main focus is going to be Deebo Samuel. Where is Deebo Samuel? Is he going to be in the backfield? Is he going to be a wide receiver? But if you can shut him down, then you're going to shut down this offense. I think it's going to be a pretty I think this will be over around halftime, early second half. But any last thoughts on this game? All right, moving on to the Sunday games. The Los Angeles Rams coming off that big win on Monday Night Football against the Arizona Cardinals. Go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who blew out the Philadelphia Eagles in their own right. Of course, these two met earlier on this season, where the Rams got a huge win. I believe it was like 37-20, if I remember correctly. And Matthew Stafford was awesome in that game. But this is the playoffs. And as we all know, Tom Brady, this is his time of the year. He loves this time of the year. And Matthew Stafford just got his first win as a starting quarterback in the playoffs. So, will the experienced Tom Brady win out? Or will Matthew Stafford, with the talent that surrounds him, be able to get by far his biggest win? Because this would be by far his biggest win ever as a starting quarterback if he could get it in Tampa.
I'm going with Rams easily. I mean, with the Buccaneers, I mean, obviously something that we've talked about a bit over the course of this season. Never count out Tom Brady, especially in the playoffs. However, the Buccaneers have just been depleted. I mean, you know, their O-line took a hit this past Sunday. I don't know if Tristan Wirfs or Ryan Jensen will be back. It's looking like they will be. But even beyond that, like, their wide receiver core is completely depleted. You know, Chris Godwin isn't coming back. Antonio Brown was obviously cut earlier, you know, late in the regular season. So that their best wide receiver is Mike Evans, which obviously is a great wide receiver. But, you know, with the other pass catchers on that team, besides Gronk, of course, and then OJ Howard, I think he's a pretty underrated tight end in this league. There's a reason why those other wide receivers were kind of buried on the depth chart in Tampa Bay, because, you know, occasionally they can come up with a clutch throw. I think, like, I forget his name, sadly. But I think like number 15 or number 18 with the Buccaneers with that clutch.
Brashard Perriman.
Yes, Brashard Perriman with that clutch catch to win in the Meadowlands, playing the Jets. However, besides that, I haven't really seen too much from this wide receiver core. There was a lot of drop passes, and thankfully for them, they were playing the Eagles. You know, against a better team. I don't think the Buccaneers will fare too well. And of course, they are facing a pretty good defense with the Los Angeles Rams. I mean, Von Miller, who isn't the same as he was back in 2015, 2016 with the Denver Broncos, but he's still pretty productive. Aaron Donald, probably best defensive player in the league, if not best all-around player in the league. And, of course, Jalen Ramsey, one of, if not the best cornerback in the NFL. So that's going to be pretty tough for them to face. And the thing is with the Rams offense, you know, you never know if Matt Stafford will pull out an MVP performance or if he'll turn into a pumpkin, you know. I personally trust him in this matchup, especially against the Buccaneers depleted secondary for sure. I know the regular season definitely playing a bit different than the postseason for sure, but him and Cooper Kupp definitely lit them up quite a bit in SoFi Stadium. Of course, this will be a playoff environment as well as they'll be going to Tampa Bay. I'm pretty sure. Hopefully, I'm not wrong on that. Oh, actually, yeah, Rams at Buccaneers, of course. So it'll definitely be a different environment for them to deal with, but their offense is pretty good. I mean, Cam Akers coming back from that torn Achilles in July, being able to still break off some pretty good runs is a good sign. Alongside Sony Michel being in the backfield, and of course Cooper Kupp really showing up, as well as OBJ having a career resurgence in LA. I just think the Rams better secondary, just better weapons in general. I trust them much more than this Buccaneers team to win this game.
I think it'll be a good game. But I think kind of like I think I'm with Connor. I think the Rams take it. It'd be really cool to see Tom Brady try to make another run for it. I don't think Connor agrees with that, but yeah, the Rams just have too many weapons. Like you got Cooper Kupp and you got Odell Beckham, like figuring it out and actually being a key piece to the offense. You got the running backs and on the team that they already showed us what they can do in Sonny Michel. And with Cam Akers coming back, who was supposed to be the bell cow for the season, yeah, it's good to see what they got, and their defense is awesome. They got great defense. If they get to Tom Brady and they give that O line trouble, it's gonna be hard. It's gonna be real hard, especially if Leonard Fournette is not at 100% when he comes back, because that's also another big piece. That's another big piece to Tom Brady's success, that he has a good running back, a receiving running back. So we'll see. But I think Rams, they'll take it. I think they beat the spread. I think both defenses are pretty good, so I think they might go under and go.
Yeah, just great thoughts by both of you. And before I get into choosing who I'm going to choose for the game, I just want to give a lot of credit to SoFi Stadium and how amazing that atmosphere looked over there. The Rams, their colors look amazing. The whole marketing approach is genius, and it's definitely a fun place that I'd love to watch a football game in. But I'm going to have to agree with Oscar. I'm going to take the under on this game with the Rams winning this. I think the Rams defense is going to step up. I hate to vote against Tom Brady in the playoffs, but you spent so much in getting Von Miller and getting Odell Beckham and getting rid of first-round picks for the future. You went all in on this season. Tom Brady threw 55 passing attempts in week 3 whenever they lost 34-24 to them. So I expect this to happen again. Even if Tom Brady throws for 432 yards or whatever he throws for, I have to take the Rams defense on this. I think the Rams offense will do just fine. Rams versus Packers next week, conference championship. That's what I expect to see. So I have to go with Rams on this.
All right. So do I complete the sweep or do I decide to fade everybody? I'm going to fade everyone, especially when you have Tom Brady as the guy that we're all fading. And we got to remember, this is the guy, and yes, I understand them. The Bucs are injured, very, very injured. But it's hard to beat the same team twice, especially when that team is commanded by Tom Brady. It's just, I mean, yes, the Rams on paper to me are the better team. But we do also remember this, too. The Rams have one less day to prepare, right? Because they've had to play on Monday night, and they got to fly all across the country for a Sunday afternoon game. So I think there's a little bit of a factor there. And then 2, how much do we trust Matthew Stafford? Because that's my question. I know he's played very well throughout this year. There are times, especially in the second half of this season, where he came up very short at the end of games. So then just 2 weeks ago against San Francisco, they had that 17-0 lead on the Niners, but that offense fell apart just by all of the talent that they have. And one thing I noticed against the Cardinals is even though Odell Beckham was going off, they really weren't getting the ball to Cooper Kupp like they were initially throughout parts of the year. And I think that's going to be a point of focus for the Buccaneers. And we have to remember, too, their rush defense is very, very good. We saw what they just did to the Eagles. And I think that's going to really render that rushing attack of the Rams moot. Because you have to remember, the Rams rushing attack really helped them last night. And it took a lot of pressure off of Matthew Stafford, who obviously was feeling a ton of pressure because he had never won a playoff game. Now, he's won that playoff game. But I just have the feeling, right? Because, I mean, yeah, they're depleted, but they still have Mike Evans. They still have Rob Gronkowski. And, yeah, I know he's not what he used to be, but he's still really, really good. Rashad Perriman's a very good receiver. Obviously, they're backfield with Keyshawn Vaughn and Leonard Fournette. They're still really good. And, yeah, I know they lost Tristan Wirfs, but the talent they still have up front is still really good. At home, with the talent that they still have, I just have this feeling that Matthew Stafford's going to make a mistake or two that's going to cost the Los Angeles Rams. That's just a hunch. I can't believe I'm the only one going with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here, but I am expecting a rematch of Buccaneers and Packers next week in Lambeau.
It's Connor's fault. He's turned us a whole year bashing Tom Brady.
Yeah, dude. I'm speaking the truth, man.
Look, I bash Tom Brady too, right? Like, but that's why I'm picking him, because he is unnaturally lucky in the playoffs, and it just feels like a spot where even though the Rams have the better team, I still have my questions really about Matthew Stafford, because, you know, yeah, they blew out the Cardinals, but can he win a close playoff game? And I think that's what he's going to have to do here in Tampa. He's not going to be able to blow. They're not going to be able to blow out Tampa like they did Arizona. So
I honestly think the Rams
go around that.
Sorry, Oscar. What did you say?
I think McVay could totally change the game. I think McVay could totally be like, hey, we're gonna go old school, high defense. We're gonna run it down. We're gonna keep the ball out of Brady's hands and have a chance. I think they can do that too. I think that's the whole thing with the Rams, that you can do so much with that offense.
Yeah,
I think Tom Brady's gonna be locked up a little bit more.
There's too much talent on that team. I don't think the Bucs could beat them this year, even if I think Brady was in New England. Whenever we saw what happened against the Titans in that wild card game, I think the same thing's going to happen here. But I think the Rams could win by 2 or more scores, like 10+. I really believe it.
Yeah, but also remember this too, like bringing up the Titans. Anyone remember that Titans-Rams game? You know, where Matthew Stafford had 3 interceptions in that game, and they got blown out by a Titans team that was still reeling from losing Derrick Henry, and really didn't do a lot on offense that game. But because of the Rams falling apart on offense, they got blown out. I mean, I'm just saying it's within the realm of possibility for the Rams to fall apart on offense here and allow Tampa Bay, even if they don't play excessively well, to win the game. So to me, that's just a feeling that I have about the Rams.
I will say between all these 4 matchups, I think this is the hardest to pick, in my opinion.
No, Bills Chiefs.
No, Bills Chiefs.
No, yeah, let's. Nick's getting me to think a little bit. Tom Brady in the playoffs, but I just don't think that. I think Bills Chiefs is easier to pick than this one, in my opinion.
See, that's where I disagree. To me, Bills Chiefs. Let's go ahead and kind of transition into that. And Connor, I want you to pick last in this one. All right.
So,
since you are the Bills fan,
should I go with my prediction first on this?
Yeah. You've already spoken.
I'll let you go first on this, but obviously this is a rematch of last year's AFC title game. 2 of the most high-flying teams in the entire NFL, 2 of the most exciting quarterbacks in the entire NFL. Everyone's probably expecting this thing to be a shootout. It's got the highest over-under there at 55. That might not be enough, honestly. Stars on both sides. A lot of people are calling this the real AFC title game. Kind of disrespectful to the Bengals and Titans, but whatever. I'll let that slide for now. I'll let you go first, Leon. Who's advancing to that AFC title game?
It's going to be the Bills. With what happened with the Giants, I might as well go on NFL.com and pick up a Josh Allen jersey. But the Chiefs don't look the same this year, even though they blew out the Steelers. It still hasn't proven much to me. If you actually look at Tyreek Hill's stats, he doesn't have that many 100-yard games, even though he had 1,200+ yards receiving. Edwards-Helaire is out. Darrell Williams, and the whole running game I don't really think was used much against the Steelers. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to take the Bills in matchup. I think Josh Allen is out for revenge in this game. While he and that second half of the regular season that I talked about earlier in the podcast, that just proves why I think he's going to do well against the Chiefs. Right now, I think Packers Bills Super Bowl, in my opinion. But Oscar, let's hear it.
I got the Bills. I think it's real close. Steelers Chiefs was closer than it should have been, in my opinion. And Bills showed how explosive they could be, and again how if you have the running game going, what that opens up for the rest of your game. So I think the Bills definitely win, and yeah, that's where I'm gonna go. I think I'll go with the under for the 55.
I agree.
And I think, what do you say? Do you say that the Bills beat the spread if they do better than the Chiefs?
That'd be 2.5 points, so they would have to win by at least 3 points to
They
cover.
can do that. They got that.
Yeah.
Easy. Sorry, that actually, you know what, Leon, you were right. That was easier. You're right. That was easier.
Yeah, of course it was easier. Because the Chiefs just sorry to go off on a tangent, but the Chiefs just don't look the same as the past 2 years. They don't. They need another big name wide receiver to fit on that team. I don't think DeMarcus Robinson, McCole Hardman, or Byron Pringle are strong enough wide receiver 2 options, even though they have won the Super Bowl in the past. It's just Mahomes, Kelsey, and Hill. And besides that, there's not much really there except for a solid O-line in which they got Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith, 2 great offensive linemen, were the future of that team. But it's just that I think the defense is ranked 27th right now. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I have to take the Bills in this. The other matchup I think is way harder to choose, Bucs and Rams. Even though I'm a believer in Stafford, you don't know what Brady can do. But Connor, let's hear it, or Nick, whoever's next.
Yeah, I'll go next. And obviously Trey Smith, love him, former Vol. Yeah, great to see him because he actually had a blood clot while he was in college, and that almost prevented him from going to the NFL at all. So, and fantastic, him still getting that shot. It was a late round pick, when a lot of us thought he would be a first round pick, and he's proving why he should have been a first round pick. But it's great to see him play with a great quarterback like Patrick Mahomes. To me, this is the toughest one because the Chiefs, they've proven that they belong here. They have 2 straight Super Bowl appearances. They won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Patrick Mahomes is, right now, to me, between him and Rodgers, you could argue is the best QB in the entire league. At times, he's looked like the best. And he threw 5 touchdowns in 12 game minutes on Sunday night. How many other quarterbacks could do that? Not many, especially against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, I know they're not vintage Pittsburgh, but they're still a really good defense. And, obviously Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce, just 2 of the greatest weapons that any quarterback could ever have. Yeah, outside of those 2, the Chiefs do kind of lack outside of that. But, yeah, their offense, very explosive. But you know what else is also really, really good? That Bills defense. That Bills defense has played so well in the second half of this year. I think they're going to prevent the Chiefs from having any sort of rush game. And they're basically, it's going to be all down to whether or not Mahomes can beat the Bills. Now, on the other side, I'll say this. The Chiefs defense has played a lot better this year than they have in recent years. But they're still not very good. And I think one thing that we were discussing before we came on is if you take a look at who they played, they really didn't play a lot of great teams. Probably the best team, in my opinion, that they played down the stretch was the Chargers. Remember, the Chargers probably should have won that game by 2 to 3 possessions if Brandon Staley wasn't an idiot and didn't constantly cost his team in crucial situations in that game. And I kind of agree with you, Leon. I just haven't been as impressed with the Chiefs throughout this year. As far because remember, I believe week 7, week 8, I was like, the Chiefs aren't even going to make the playoffs. Well, they proved me wrong in that aspect. But right now, Josh Allen's just on another level. Ever since that Monday night loss to the Patriots, I feel like what happened that night sparked something within him, and he's just been a different guy since. He has elevated himself from star to superstar status. And what he has around him and that rushing attack. I was one of the biggest critics of the show about Because in my opinion, I've always thought Devin Singletary was a really good running back talent, and I thought they've had some talent there. I don't know why they would never utilize him, but now they are. And Brian DeBall is definitely coaching his way into a head coaching position somewhere after this year because of it. I think right now the Bills have the energy around them. They have the aura around them. And you look, I like in matchups like this, look for what are the motivations here. Because obviously there's a Lombardi Trophy on the line eventually. But the Bills got embarrassed in Arrowhead a year ago in the AFC title game. Yeah, you could say, well, maybe they didn't think they were going to be there, right? But still, I mean, anytime you lose an AFC title game, you want to desperately get back there. And especially when you get the same team that knocked you out, I really think that's going to give the Bills a chip on their shoulder because this is a potential legacy game for Josh Allen. Because if he could beat Patrick Mahomes, that's a check mark in terms of what we remember him as for his career. Because if he doesn't beat Patrick Mahomes here, then we start saying, well, he's a great talent, but he can't really win the big one. Patrick Mahomes has already proven he can. But I think Josh Allen is good enough to do it as well. And to me, this is his time. I think it's going to be high scoring. I would take the over. I'm going Bills 35, Chiefs 31. The Bills are going to prove they belong. I think it's going to be a rematch of the Music City Miracle game next week in Nashville for the Bills and Titans, which I think could set up actually very well for the Buffalo Bills. And I'm saying this as a Titans fan because it could be, because think about it, because I said this at the beginning. You beat the first game is the Patriots, your arch rival that has dominated you for 20 years or so. Dominated them. Then this week you get the team that knocked you out last year and has the heir apparent to title of best quarterback in the NFL. But could you knock them out? And then if you get past them, could you get the team that you knocked you out 27 years ago with a miracle play? And then beyond that, could you get the Packers? I mean, it could be just the
Nick took
ideal.
it back 20 years.
Yeah, miracle run. So we'll see what happens, but I like the Bills here to win.
All right. So no, y'all know who I'm already picking. I don't even need to say it. Buffalo all the way this time. But I'm gonna go into why I think that the Bills will beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead. Of course, this is a really high stakes game, at least for Josh Allen's legacy, as well as like the Bills, like reputation, and some of the things that people talk crap about us. At least outside of the Bills Mafia stratosphere. Josh hasn't beaten Patrick Mahomes in the playoffs yet. Of course, he did beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead in the regular season on Sunday Night Football in October. He got that monkey off his back, but people are already putting an asterisk over it just because of the state of the Chiefs defense at that time, as well as some of the inconsistencies in their offense. But again, like Nick said earlier, who have they really faced since they've, experienced this resurgence? I mean, I got some of the stats and the games pulled up right here. So I'd say it started around the time that they played the Packers in Arrowhead, and that was a Jordan Love Packers. So you should win that game. And then the next week they played the Raiders, who were fraudulent. Dallas, who ended up being frauds, but they were also pretty injured also. I don't think CeeDee Lamb or Amari Cooper played that game as far as I remember. I know that wide receiver core was quite a bit injured.
No,
in
they
that
played.
Game. Oh.
I think CeeDee Lamb. I saw CeeDee Lamb play. I'm almost sure Amari Cooper played.
I do remember some injuries, but of course,
Dak was like 60% in that game too. So it was they weren't playing the best version of what was ultimately like not a great team.
Yeah. And then they played Denver the next week in the Dallas and Denver game, not to discredit Mahomes. Like him and Aaron Rodgers are probably the best quarterbacks in this league right now. But he didn't play all that well in those games. Like no touchdowns, one pick. Then they played the Raiders again. Of course, they won that game. Then the best team not the best team, but a the best team that they beat within that stretch, in my opinion, at least. Probably the Chargers. He played relatively well, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. But of course, that Chargers defense was just full of like Uber drivers, man. Like Travis Kelce was just dancing all around them. And then of course they beat the crap out of the Steelers. And then the Bengals, they lost a close game, but I think the Bengals really provided a blueprint as to how you can beat Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. Close game playing the Broncos the next week. Of course, they beat the crap out of the Steelers this past Sunday in Arrowhead. Yeah, personally, I just think that the Bills right now, they're even better than when they played the Chiefs, in Arrowhead. Because of course they went through that slump. I think midseason, they lost playing the Patriots. They lost to the Jaguars, and Josh Allen wasn't necessarily playing his best football. Neither was the defense, offensive line, et cetera, et cetera. But ever since that loss, playing the Patriots on Monday Night Football, they've really come back. I mean, besides of course, that Josh Allen game where he threw in 3 interceptions playing the Falcons, that was terrible. But other than that, he's been pretty good. I mean, those last 2 matchups playing the Patriots, he's been playing lights out. And that last game, like we talked about earlier, probably the best game of Josh Allen's career, probably the best game that the Buffalo Bills that I've seen them play ever. I mean, it's really hard to pick against a team that, doesn't punt, doesn't kick a field goal, doesn't turn over the ball, just scores touchdown after touchdown, and they couldn't do that playing the Steelers, who are arguably a worse team than the Patriots. I think both teams, it'll definitely help them quite a bit to be on their A game. It is a bit hard to pick this game, even as a Bills fan, considering some of the inconsistencies of the Bills. You don't know if Josh Allen is going to play some amazing game like John Elway, or if he's, going to throw a couple picks and he's not going to look as good, But I'm still going to ride with the Bills on this one for sure. I think they go into Arrowhead and they really show that they are Super Bowl contenders. I think that run game, especially showing up with Devin Singletary, is going to help them quite a bit. Going to show that they're multi-dimensional. Those RPOs are going to be flying like crazy, and Dable's really going to prove that he is a number 1 head coaching candidate for next season. Yeah, Bills win. I think they cover, and I'm going to go with the over also.
So I guess IRP is now hopped on the Bills Mafia train. So
Let's go.
Yeah. At least until next week, which I might have to oppose it, but we'll wait and see. Obviously, if the Bengals somehow, if the Bengals beat the Titans, then I will hop on Bills Mafia for the remainder of the postseason. But we'll see whether that happens.
This is crazy. I mean, just like so many upsets.
Yeah.
I mean, we truly don't know, right? But if I remember correctly, so I have Bills and Titans for the AFC title game, and I have Bucs Packers for the NFC. Leon, if I remember correctly, you're going to have Bengals Bills AFC, and you're going to have Rams Packers for the NFC. Connor, you're going to have Bengals Bills and Rams Packers.
Right.
And Oscar, you'll have Bills Titans, and then Rams Packers.
Yeah,
correct.
It sounds pretty good, actually.
All right. So pretty much the only team that didn't get any votes whatsoever. So the 49ers and Chiefs did not get any votes. Obviously, the Chiefs, out of those two, to me, would probably have the better shot of winning. I mean, it seems like the Niners, they're basically more than double an underdog compared to every other team. So, I mean, we'll see if the Niners shock everyone and win, but I seriously doubt it. But all right, guys. So to begin to wrap up the show, it's time to go into our players of the week. And I will start with you, Leon.
So I'm not going to go with stats. I'm going to go with based on who was a big game changer. I picked this player because Connor took the other player I was going to pick. But I'd have to go with Micah Hyde. I was watching that interception live against Mac Jones early in the first quarter. an amazing interception. It just seemed like it was a game changer to give Buffalo the momentum to win that game. And we'll see how well Micah Hyde and the rest of the defense plays in Arrowhead this week.
Connor, you're going to have a player from the same game, and I think everyone can kind of guess where you're going to go.
Yeah, I'm going with my boy Josh Allen here. All right. Best game of his professional career so far. He went 21 for 25, completing 84% of his passes, 5 touchdowns, no picks. He also carried the ball 6 times for 66 yards. Man, what can this guy not do? All right. Come on. Let's be for real here. He didn't even need to throw the ball that much because he was just throwing it deep every time, getting easy completions over to Diggs. He can just throw a F-it ball and it'll still be a touchdown. Dude, crazy stuff, man. I love Josh Allen. Modern John Elway.
Oscar, you're player of the week.
Well, I got Jamar Chase. I think he's the rookie phenom of the year. He's a storyline. It's great to have it's great that he gets to play with the guy he played in college. They have that great dynamic. He gets to have the successful season. He gets to help to get them to the playoffs. The guy does great. He's dependable. He definitely put on a show, 130 yards. Still no touchdowns for the week, but still made his presence felt in an offense that he wasn't supposed to be the star. It was supposed to be T. Higgins, and he actually got to blow up and be really effective. So, yeah, that's my guy for the week.
Yeah, I love watching Burrow and Chase play together, but I'm going to hate watching them play together this Saturday. I have a feeling. But my player of the week is going to be Deebo Samuel. In my opinion, single-handedly carried that offense, had over 100 total yards in terms of total production. He had 38 yards receiving on 3 catches, 72 yards on 10 carries. That is good for 110 yards. Had a rushing touchdown. I almost put the game on ice there if it wasn't for kind of a weird spot that kind of kept them from getting that first down to ice it. If the Niners have any chance to pull off an upset in Green Bay, he's going to have to go off, help out whoever the quarterback is, really get his touches in that backfield. I'm really curious to see what Kyle Shanahan does with him in this really big game because he can be used anywhere. And it's just really cool what he has become inside that 49ers offense. All right, so it's time for our any last comment section before we wrap up. And I kind of want to bring up this one point here. There's a lot of discussion going around about the 7 seed and whether or not it's really necessary because we've had it for 2 years now. Last year, the Colts-Bills were the 7-2 game. And that was actually a really good game. That Bills won 27-24. Was a solid opening. But ever since that first game, every other 7-2 game has been a blowout. We had Saints-Bears last year, 21-9. Probably one of the most boring playoff games of all time. Then fast forward to this year, Bucs-Eagles. Blowout was 31-0 before the 31-15 final, and then Chiefs just ran the Steelers out of the stadium, 5 touchdowns in 12 minutes of game time. Are we starting to question the legitimacy of having a 7th team? Because we had 1 out of 4 games that was competitive here with the 7 seed. Do we think that any 7 seed realistically could ever make a playoff run? Because we've seen 6 seeds do it. We saw the New York Giants in 2007 win from the 6 seed. So it's possible. But I find it improbable. Like, I don't think it's the same necessarily as like a 16 seed in March Madness, where we've only seen 1 team ever win a game, UMBC over Virginia a couple of years ago. But, I'm not going to be against more football, but if we're gonna have more football, I want it to be good football.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. Like you said, the only real competitive 7th seed game was that Bills Colts game. Back last season, and of course, Bears Saints wasn't competitive. Bucs Eagles wasn't competitive, and of course, Chiefs Steelers was not competitive whatsoever either. So I don't know. I was really hoping that the Chargers would maybe sneak into the playoffs as a 7th seed, or at least I think like they would have been the 6th seed, and then the Raiders would have been the 7th seed if they ended up tying. But like, I mean, still, even like, it's just never really competitive. You can kind of they kind of feel like bowl games in a way to me. That's what I was thinking. Over this past super wild card weekend, you know, like they're teams that they don't really fit in with some of the competition that they're facing. It kind of also reminds me of the 2017 Bills, where like you're kind of just like happy that you're in the dance. Like you might as well just buy all those playoff t-shirts, because that's as far as you're getting, honestly. And like you kind of know that those teams aren't going to the Super Bowl. So those games are kind of more just like, hey, they're like tune-up games for the home team. And we'll see if the opposing team, the 7th seed, will score enough points to make it respectable. That's all that's really there to these 2nd seed versus 7th seed games. And like Nick said, also, like, we've seen 6 seeds go on and win the Super Bowl, like the 2007 Giants. One of my first football memories. It was really fun to see them beat the previously undefeated Patriots and getting to rub it in my Boston cousins' faces, on the phone right after the game. And of course, the Packers in 2010 also beating the Pittsburgh Steelers in the Super Bowl. But I think they should just limit it to those 6 teams in each conference, because there's not really any reason why the 7th seed should be in there. I don't really see those teams really going on a deep playoff run or, being competitive in the postseason.
I think we need to see more of like a sample size. It's just 4 games, and maybe we get to see a couple more years. But I think the argument that supports it is how the AFC performed this year, and the argument that hurts is how the NFC performed this year. It makes it more interesting. It forces quarterbacks to play well in Week 18, so maybe they rest less, or they have to earn the rest to become the 1 seed. So it forces them, if they're the 2 seed and they need to win a game to get the 1 seed, it forces them to perform better in Week 18 for the playoffs to really earn that rest. I'd like to keep it around, to be honest, and just see how it goes upwards from here. Hopefully the Giants could be the 7th seed next year. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I think kind of touched on it a little bit, though. We kind of expected other teams to make it. We expected teams like the Chargers. We expected teams like the Colts to make it to the playoffs last week, and that kind of changed the dynamic. You see the Steelers, that was a fucking came out of left field. The Eagles probably wasn't as drastic, but we expected better teams to be in the playoffs. So if we saw the Colts, probably wouldn't be saying that if we were able to see the Colts game. And it's also kind of like the other side of the coin of an upset. The opposite of an upset is like a dominant win. And if you're the dominant team, then you get that. You get to play the lower seeded team to secure your next spot, versus giving another team a bye. You're forced to compete. You're forced to prove that you still are a better team, and you could beat the 7th seed on your way to the next round. So I think it's fine. I think it definitely adds more revenue, because you get to play in another city that probably wouldn't have been able to have a playoff game. You always bring in the fans, so you hope it's good for the brand of the game. And you give a little bit of hope. How many freaking Eagles fans really thought they had a chance? They said, hey, we can do it. How many Dallas guys really thought they could do it? And probably all the Cowboys fans probably thought they were going to go all the way. So, yeah, I think it's fun. I think it adds to the game. Obviously, when you start thinking about injuries and was this game really necessary, or maybe it affects me going to the next round. A lot of that is just sourpuss talk. Like, it didn't work out for you. Better luck next year.
And what was really interesting point there is that the Colts and Chargers were probably better than the 6 and 7 seeds, but Just once again, it just shows why the NFL is, I think, ultimately the best league. This isn't like college football where you can rank a team over another team, even though they have more losses. It's ultimately the wins and losses league, right? So it's you earn your way in. Like, even though the Steelers may not even be in the top 10 of AFC teams, like I don't even think they may not even be better than the Dolphins, to be honest with you. But they found ways to win certain games to get in, and you got to give them the credit for that. And it'll be very interesting to see how we move forward. I do think that perhaps in the future we'll see more competitive 7-2 games. It's just so far, unfortunately, the matchups haven't been the best outside of Colts Bills. But I think that if you got Colts Chiefs or Chargers Chiefs, those would have been far, far better games. So, maybe don't give up. I know this wasn't outside of 49ers, Cowboys, and Raiders, Bengals, not the most exciting wildcard weekend. But I think we'll get some really exciting ones moving forward. But even regardless of that, divisional round this week is going to be incredible. Two of us will either be really pumped up next week or heartbroken. Hopefully it's the other, because if we're both happy, then next week will be pretty interesting, to say the least. As
it's a good storyline. I like that. You guys should just talk trash to each other all week long.
Yeah, and what's on and what's crazy is neither one of us have ever seen our teams make the playoffs. Like not playoff, but the Super Bowl. I mean, the Titans the Titans made the Super Bowl when I was a year old. The Bills haven't made the playoffs since any of us were born. So, we could be seeing some history for either one of our teams here, but we're not gonna get too far ahead of ourselves. We got to get through. I got to get through the Bengals. He's got to get through the Chiefs first. And then we'll see if we're both alive on the other side. Of course, if you're NFC teams, obviously good luck to the Rams and the Packers and Niners and the Bucs. Good luck to all of your teams, as if you're still alive. And if your teams are in the off season, just sit back, relax, enjoy it. We have plenty of experience doing that, but it is fun to be one of the final 8 fan bases and teams in it. But for Leon Taryan, Conor Kennedy, and Oscar Orengo, my name is Nick Hill. Thank you for listening to this very long and in-depth instant review podcast. Next week, we are going to recap the divisional round and get you ready for those conference title games, as we'll be down to the final 4 teams fighting for the Lombardi Trophy. Take care, everyone, and we hope you have a great rest of your week.
Let's go Bills.
Go Titans.